Welcome back to Empire Fit Talk, everybody. With us today, we have
Coach Gaby.
Coach Dan.
And Coach Gilbert.
All right, so we got all not all. We got Empire coaches in the panel. We got 4 coaches here. And today's topic, we're going to be discussing touch on different ways of training, okay? Things that we've seen a lot, and also that probably have questions from some of our members as well. So we figure, why don't we discuss about these? What are the difference? Should you be doing this? So on and so forth. So we have functional training, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, and also gymnastic. These are the 4 things that obviously I think a lot of the fitness world kind of revolve around currently when it comes to strength conditioning gym, CrossFit, boot camp, so on and so forth. They have some sort of element of these 4. So let's get into it then. Does anybody here wants to start with the functional training, what they know, what it is, who's good for, and yeah, should people do it, so on and so forth? Anybody?
Okay, well, I could probably start. So from what I've seen and then from what I know, I think functional training is one of the most conventional or most things that people do out there. Like things that we do here in our classes is mostly functional training. It's not CrossFit, it's not powerlifting, or it's not anything else. So functional training is mostly about doing things, exercises, movements yang actually on the daily basis we do. Jadi kayak squatting, like we're sitting down, reaching out objects overhead, putting things overhead, and jumping, running, all those things that we do here, the functional training. I think it's more so that later on we can function properly. The older we get, the lesser the risk. So by doing functional training, I think that's what. And then who's good for? I think it's more for everybody. Because the way I look at it, the functional training, you don't really focus on a certain, you gotta lift a certain amount of weights, or you need to run this fast, or you need to jump this high. There's no benchmark that you always have to hit. I think it's more like, okay, just do what you can for now, and then you progress properly later on. I think that's what it is. So I think functional training is okay, but for everybody to start.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anybody want to chime in on that as well? Want to add what they think about the functional training and expand on that a little bit more? Anybody?
Coach Gilbert mau duluan ya? Susah banget sih namanya. Gilbert mau duluan.
Oke, setuju dengan pendapatnya sama Coach Stan. Functional training itu bisa dipakai dengan alat yang ada di sekitar kita. Terus juga kita bisa menggunakan badan kita sendiri. Karena functional training itu fungsinya kan untuk membantu kegiatan kita sehari-hari, seperti kita naik anak tangga atau mengangkat beban, kayak kita ngangkat galon biasanya. Bahkan bisa dipakai buat kita kayak menggendong anak. Jadi kita ngelatih sikap mana yang benar. Jadi kita nggak ada salah ke plitek gitu, kakinya backnya kayak jadi salah urat gitu. Nah gitu sih. Begitu sih kalau menurut pendapat saya.
Keplitek.
Iya, keplitek.
Keplitek bahasa Indonesia.
Bahasanya keplitek.
A tweak.
Ya.
I see. Okay.
Gimana menurut Coach Gaby pendapatnya?
Kayak dapat dari pendapat dari Coach Stan sama Coach Gilbert.
Ya.
Sama sih answer saya itu, jadi it's good for everybody kan, itu it's to function well, to move well, to move without pain. Jadi kita di bootcamp class kita ada prowler push misalnya, itu melatih kita untuk bisa mendorong sesuatu. Atau ada juga namanya di 8 weeks challenge kita sering farmer's carry kan. Farmer's carry itu untuk apa sih? Biasanya ya you are lifting your groceries or you're lifting heavy things, so you're actually training it in the gym supaya kita bisa pakai sehari-hari. Terus kayak melatih squat, kita melatih push up, kita melatih rotation kita, hinging kita, core kita, dan itu kita pakai sehari-hari kan. Jadi dari beginner ke advance kita masih bisa pakailah latihan ini. supaya nggak tuanya lah nggak kepitek kayak Coach Gilbert. Jadi I'm also very fond of functional training as it makes sure that I'm just healthy, my tendons are healthy, my muscles are intact as I grow older. So, yep, that's my take on functional training. See? Anything about functional training, Coach Elvin?
Very cool, everybody. Well, functional training recently has boomed out due to the rise of exercises such as gyms, such as CrossFit, boot camps, right? So functional meaning with function, it could translate to everyday life, like Coach Stan mentioned. So I guess to make a clearer definition, what is not functional is segmented training, right? So if you want to know the difference, okay, where function use multi joints or multi muscle, right? Because the idea is to serve a purpose with something with it, right? So for instance, if you take a bicep curl, the purpose is to train bicep, right? But when we are training, for instance, deadlift, is the purpose is it will translate to hopefully when we pick things off from the ground and then carry it over, right? So now I'm not saying segmented could aid in the functional. It definitely can. I mean, have a stronger bicep will eventually will also help with like doing something functional such as pulling a truck or something like that, right? So functional is with function. That's what it stands for. If we take a CrossFit definition, CrossFit is a constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. That's the definition of, well, that's what CrossFit is. So it blew up because of that functional. Hence why you see in a gym such as CrossFit, they don't do a bicep curl or a things such as tricep extension, so on and so forth, right? So when I do a tricep, I just train tricep. So running is functional, right? There are 7, if I believe. Please don't quote me on this. It's been a while. So obviously you got push, pull, jump, throw, rotation. You got the gate. How many is that? This is 6 or 7. I forgot.
I did
So
not
lunge
count.
and then lunge, right? If I miss something, please don't quote me on it. I have a brain freeze right now. So those are functional movement or things that you will see on our everyday life. So functional training, things that will aid into those things, right? Like throwing a ball, and then if we're throwing like a wall ball or we're slamming ball, well, that aid to one of those functional movements such as throwing or throwing a punch, so on and so forth. That's what he meant, right? When we do the functional training. So the difference is really beneficial for longevity aspect. And if you are somebody who are wants to have this kind of training that will translate to something else, then we will recommend these kind of training, functional training. So if you are somebody that likes to go hiking on a mountain, we will definitely recommend functional training more so than bodybuilding or a segmented style of training, right? Why? Because these are things that you would potentially use, right? You will not go in the mountain and start bicep curling a log. That's not gonna happen. Or you're gonna tricep tricep extension things over your head. It doesn't work like that, right? You're most likely gonna do a push press or you're gonna put things over your head. So if you are somebody training to be an athlete also, depending on what sport, then functional type of training will probably be more beneficial than you are doing a segmented style of training. I'm not saying you can't mix the two, but that's what you are kind of playing around with, Now, who do you think it's for? Okay, now functional training for me, although it sounds good and then it's really beneficial for the general population, functional training, I wouldn't recommend it for somebody who have a severe injuries, who have a problem with a certain movement, who have either just finishing off surgery. Okay, because why? Functional movement is a multi-joint exercises, multi muscle exercises, and when you do these kind of things, the control that you have on each movement is less. Okay, because to control all of the muscle is way more difficult than trying to control one joint or one muscle group, right? So for instance, if I say I have a torn hamstring and I want to train my leg, doing running is functional, but it's probably not recommended because even if you go slow, you have no specific control on your hamstring muscle. So if you are somebody that have these injuries, or if you're really, really old, okay, and then you are having hip problem, you might want to be careful about the functional exercise that you're doing because you have no control on how the movement is going to impact your hip, okay? And that's when a segmented exercise or a control isolated exercise would come in, such as bodybuilding style of exercise, because then we could totally avoid the hips. We could work, if you want to work on lower body, you have hamstring problem, we'll do quad extension, no issue there, right? Or other things that will like work on the calves specifically, work on the quads, work on the glutes specifically. Although they are connected, there are certain movement that we can still kind of like activate the glute without having too much impact on the hamstring, right? So segmented definitely have issues. Functional training is great, but just have to be careful depending on your limitation. Now, maybe if you have injury, maybe you could kind of but like push through it. But the problem with that is to be functional, it's better to be balanced, right? If you're not balanced, for instance, if you have a hip problem and then you're doing a functional exercise such as deadlift, although it's a functional movement, but because you are compensating and you're not really engaging the hips, what happens is that movement become dysfunctional. So it doesn't become a functional movement anymore. It's a dysfunctional movement because you are not recruiting the right muscle group. You are not using the intended muscle group, right? So if I have hip problem, I'm going to start compensating it one way or another. And that's not functional. Although you look like a deadlift, it's not going to help, okay? Same thing. You have a hamstring issue. You're running. You're starting putting more pressure on the quads because you are trying to compensate from your hamstring. Then that become dysfunctional. Is that clear? So make sure, not all functional movement will transfer over as a functional exercise. If you're messed up, if your body is imbalanced, functional movement become dysfunctional movement. Anyway, I kind of ran out of the tangent over there. So this is something that a lot of people kind of forget and confuse because functional movement can be dysfunction if you doesn't have a proper alignment or you are overcompensating on a certain area. Okay. Now again, if you're good, your problem is somebody who's just moving and doesn't have major issue, functional movement would be great for you. All right.
That's a big one.
Anyway,